Yeah, did I get your attention? Hello, VTubers. This video is for this video is for you if you're recording at home, okay? Today we're going to talk about how to make your vocal recordings for things like voiceover, narrations, literally anything sound 10 times better and for free. Well, free with a caveat depending on if you have the stands and materials that you need to actually properly mount your microphones and such. But let's just get into it. So I've talked about this before. The big thing that separates your voiceover recordings from like professional voiceover recordings is your space. And well, your microphones, of course, but generally speaking, even modern day USB microphones are pretty damn good. No matter what microphone you have, if your space sounds really good, then your recording will usually sound really good. Today, I'm going to talk about mainly one thing. There's a lot of other things to consider, but this one trick, this one secret tip, this one trick will literally change your world. So what is that trick? I've talked about this before. It's what I like to call the blanket method. So at home, if you're recording and you're at your desk like I currently am, and you don't have any room treatment, which is fine because that's normal for a lot of us recording at home, okay? A lot of the VTubers out there don't have room treatment or studio spaces to record in, and I understand, totally fine. This does not apply to streaming, okay? Because a lot of you are going to give me my replies in my comments and you're going to be like, but how do I get my model tracking to work? You don't. This is not for streaming. This is not for recording your model. This is for when you are doing voiceover things that need to sound good. How does this work? Well, easy. Get yourself a thick ass blanket, okay? And then, simply put, take your blanket, put it over your head like this. Fuck me. This is the hardest shit I've ever done in my life. Okay, there we go. Now there's a blanket over my head and you probably can't see me anymore on camera, but I'm talking into the microphone. Now here's the deal. Obviously this isn't gonna be super perfect, but it's already doing some good. So let me do a little bit of, I am now talking into the Rode pod mic underneath my blanket so that way you can hear if there are echoes coming back into the microphone. Wahoo! It's a me, Jay. Okay. Now I'm going to take it off my head and give you an example without. This is me talking into the Rode pod mic without a blanket on so that you can hear whether or not there are echoes coming back into the mic and whether or not there is a quality difference. At face value, when listening, you may not really hear the difference, but I'm going to show you something in a second that really matters. Okay, so we've done that, right? You got a blanket over your head and you're probably now thinking, okay, Jay, but here's some problems that I have with this. My concerns are it's going to get hot, it's going to get heavy, and I'm going to get tired. All of those are correct. You are 100% right. What do we do about it? Well, there's a couple things you could do, but it requires you to kind of move your setup around. And if you're okay with that, then we can do that. So let's talk about how to make this process a little less painful on your body, or rather on your arms, because it may still be painful for the rest of your body, and a little more comfortable for you, while also allowing you to do things like hold your phone if you need to, look at maybe a script if you need to. So all that said, let's move somewhere else. I'm going to scoot over here to my bed, and I'm going to show you another thing you can try. Okay, so here we've scooted to my bed. Welcome to my bed. Don't mind all the fucking stuffed animals. It's a mess over here right now, but that's kind of on purpose. We'll get to that in a second. But here we're at a spot where it's not really comfortable. My knees are gonna fucking die from this, but it's gonna sound pretty good, and I'll kind of explain why. The whole point to everything I'm showing you right now is the more you can box your microphone in with a bunch of soft, plush-like or comforter-like materials, the more you're gonna be able to remove all of these echoes and reflections and problems that we experience while recording at home. Now, it's, again, not the most perfect. It doesn't remove everything, but it's going to make things sound a lot cleaner. And when you're dealing with someone like myself, who has a lot of audio cleanup tools, it actually makes our job a lot easier to deal with. So if you got a mic stand like this, and you can put your mic on a mic stand and are able to move your like interface, or you have a long enough XLR cable to go from your interface to your microphone from across the room, which I would recommend getting a really long XLR cable for those of you at home. I would say get it like a 15 or 25 foot XLR. They're very useful in like applications like this. If I was at my desk and had my computer on right now, I would be able to reach from my interface, but I'm not. I'm using an external recorder right now just for the sake of making recording easier for me. But let's say you're over here and you're like, okay, Jay, I've got my mic. I've got it on something that can hold it up because right now it's also like on my bed. It would fall over if it was down here, right? In theory, we're going to build up around this microphone as much as we can with soft material. I know a couple of VTubers that actually have really good setups for this at their desks. I would urge them, if they see this this thread on Twitter to quote retweet with their setups. I know Valley has a really, really good setup. So that's a setup I think about literally all the time. You could pillow or blanket fort up at your desk. I know it's kind of a pain in the ass to deal with, which is why this method is kind of like, it's easier to do in other places. Or if you can get like a box, it doesn't intrude on your desk space, right? But in theory, literally whatever you have to do to get this to sound good, you should do. I'm gonna just fucking put pillows and shit up here. I'm just gonna hover this shit in. This is kind of difficult. I can't. And I'm gonna also, you know, do one of these. I'm gonna just stick all my plushes and shit over here. Big guy right there. There he is. Big guy. Okay, now this isn't perfect. Obviously, like in theory, you'd want to come more forward. Like you would want to have a wall basically like right here, but I don't have that. Anything that is soft is gonna help here. So what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna throw the blanket over my head and kind of run it from the back of the pillows all the way back over my head. And then that's also gonna kind of save us. It's gonna kind of hold the blanket up a little bit for us. There we go. So now I'm inside the blanket. And honestly, this is way more comfortable. I mean, I'm still holding my arms up because you want to kind of block the blanket from like touching the microphone. In theory, I guess this doesn't really solve our problem, but you could have a stand or something that could like hold this up over you so it's not a pain in the ass to hold. But in theory, you also only need one arm. So I got one arm up here and I'm holding the blanket and now I can tap the mic if I wanted to. But now it's a little bit more, I mean, there's more soft stuff around. There's a little bit of space, which kind of allows reflections to dissipate and dissolve into the soft materials. This kind of helps a little bit. It's also better than just having a blanket directly brushed against the microphone because it also saves you from getting some blanket noise in your mic. I'm now talking inside of my little blanket fort at my bed, and this is a test for you to be able to hear the reflections and things of that nature. Obviously, there are still a little bit in the room, and you will hear them, but they're not nearly as prevalent, and they aren't nearly as bad. And now I'm back at the microphone talking into the room with reflections. These are much more prevalent, much more present. They're going to be more of a pain in the ass to deal with later. Now, here's the thing about all this. Obviously, you can see I am hot. It was very uncomfortable and I was only in there for like 30 seconds. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind here. If you have to do this method, obviously, 1, take frequent breaks. 2, keep drinking water. And 3, if you are someone who is prone to like heat stroke or, you know, you have health issues, obviously this probably isn't the best way to go about doing this. I would really recommend getting a box and then some like stands that you could drape a blanket over top of, or just stands that you could drape blanket and make a blanket fort at your desk or at a spot for. If you don't have to hold anything up or stress your body out, that's the best case scenario. But obviously, this is not a best case scenario. I'm just here to tell you how to make your audio sound better. This does also work for vocal covers. I know tons of VTubers that do this kind of setup for a vocal cover at home. I'm not really talking about vocal covers today. I'm more concerned as somebody who does sound design and audio post-production work about your vocal recording quality in general. I'm going to quickly pop over to the computer and see if I can't get you some examples now of the process vocals where you might really be able to hear the reflections and stuff more. Okay, hey, what's up? So we're back at the computer and now I'm going to show you kind of what these things sound like with some processing as well so that you can really hear what's going on. So here's an example of what I would have something sound like if I had processed it with just EQ and compression. This is me talking into the Rode Pod mic without a blanket on so that you can hear whether or not there are echoes coming back into the mic and whether or not there is a quality difference. And if you don't have headphones on, it might be a little hard to tell the difference, but there are clearly, you can hear my bedroom in that recording. Especially with the processing, it gets worse and worse. This is exacerbated when we talk about vocals for covers because I would be compressing way more than this. So right now I'm only doing like, you can hear whether or not they're at loudest points. I'm only doing almost 10 decibels of compression, but on like a vocal cover, I might do more like 20 or 30 or more, depending on what is needed. I'm going to like pin the compressor basically. This is a great example. Echoes coming back into the mic and whether or not there is a quality difference. Okay, so like in that example where like we'd say doing more compression to like a vocal cover or something, you can really hear the room in that scenario. Let me go now to the other spoken example. This is the one with the blanket. I am now talking into the Rode Pod mic underneath my blanket so that way you can hear if there are echoes coming back into the microphone. Listen to how much cleaner that is. At face value, when listening, you may not... Here's this one. Pod mic underneath my blanket. Wahoo! It's a me, Jay. And there are still echoes in the recording, but you don't get all of the compression brings up that like mid-roomy sound, right? Like in here, there is a quality difference. at face value, and it affects how clean the recording sounds, right? And whether or not there is a quality difference. There's less room, so it's super clean. And I mean, honestly, pod mic underneath my blanket, so that way it's pretty clean. And obviously, like I said, if we were doing this for a voiceover, we may not need to compress that much. Pod mic underneath my blanket, so that way you can hear if there are echoes coming back into the microphone. Again, there is echo there a little bit from the room, but with the blankets, it's so much cleaner. It's so much drier is the correct word we would use. Dry meaning like less reverb, less, The whole reason that as an audio engineer, we want your recordings to be dry is so that we have control over things later down the line. It's the whole like fix it in post versus pre mentality. The worse your recording sounds before any processing, the worse it will sound after processing. It'll just exponentially get worse. Quick little example. One more thing to finally solidify this topic. Here I've got Photoshop. I'm going to show you a little thing. Some of you sometimes are asking like, okay, well, what about those sound foam panels that people put up on their walls? The only time that sound foam panels really do you any good, and this is still with a caveat of information, is when you are in a closet and then you just fucking pad that shit with tons of padding, right? And then also cover the ceiling, also cover the floor if it's made of carpet. And even then you still get like low end buildup issues, which again, I'd rather deal with than reflections. But something to think about is like, why don't those work? Because the foam padding that you get off of Amazon is like, sorry, forgive me for my shitty drawing, is like 2 inches thick, okay? 2 inches is nothing in terms of padding, because what happens is you speak, let's say this is your voice in like sine waves, right? You speak and it comes through and it passes through the padding and then bounces back off the wall. It does lose a little bit of energy, so if it passes through the padding, it might go like this, but it still comes back through. The 2 inches of padding is not even near enough to do this. That's why like studios and treated spaces that you would go record in have thick, either like diffused walls with like, wood slats and stuff that help bounce reflections around and dissipate them. Or they have padding, like your 2-inch padding and bass traps, and the walls are insulated properly with correct like soundproofing material. They're also maybe thicker than 2-inch padding, right? So like those spaces are created for that purpose. If you just slap 2-inch padding around your space, it's not going to do anything for you, especially in a bedroom. Like it can kind of help, right? Again, at the end of the day, a lot of stuff is better than nothing. But we're talking, you have to have your whole bedroom covered in padding from the ceiling to the floor. It can't just be, oh, here's my computer desk with my little VTuber, and then here's some padding, and then here's some padding. That's not going to do shit for you. Sorry. It's just the truth, right? Kind of does a little bit, but it's not enough to fix this problem we're talking about right now. This is why when you're recording into your microphone, right? Here's your little cat ears, because you're probably a fucking stinky cat VTuber, smiley face with a whoa. And then here's your microphone, right? And then here's your blanket. The reason this works so well is because it's a similar process to the padding, but you think about blankets are thicker, right? I forgot to mention, the thicker your blanket that goes over your head, the better this is going to be. Multiple blankets layered on, it'll get hot. But the thicker your blanket and the more padding you have in between. So let's say when I was at the bed and I had all those stuffed animals, right? And all that bedding and all that around me, right? Your sound waves that come out of your mouth have to pass through all of these soft materials, not just once, right? They come out, it has to pass through that material and lose energy, come through, bounce off the wall and lose energy, and then pass through again and lose even more energy before it comes back into the microphone. The theory here is the more padding you cover around yourself, the thicker materials, the more of them you put there, the more energy you are destroying or dissipating or absorbing from a sound wave when it passes around the room and comes back into the mic. Sound waves already lose energy when they bounce off of walls in the first place, right? That's why reflections that come back into your microphone, even without anything, sound quieter than your voice, because they've already lost some energy, right? But that's the whole thing to think about, is like the more you put around you, think of it like a force field that dissipates energy, the less you're going to hear it in the microphone, which is why, I mean, you still kind of hear it in those examples because it's still coming back through, but barely, right? It's not even close to its original volume. I hope you learned something nifty from this. I'm sorry this video is so long, because I'm sure it will be. Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of how you can up your recording game at home. There are probably a lot of people in my comments who will be like, but what about this problem? What about this problem? How do I read my script? But it gets hot, it gets hard. I know, we know that. But I promise you, your mixers or audio post-production engineers will will fucking love you for this. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Good luck, happy recording, and I hope that your next project sounds fucking incredible.